What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video, and today we are taking the dialed Pruf series bow sight and we're putting it up against the HHA Nytrx, and we're going to put these two sights side by side and we're going to talk about the similarities and differences. Now, if you guys enjoy these types of videos, please subscribe and like the video, as your guys' support does greatly help us out. We're on the road to hit 13,000 subscribers before the end of the month. I know it's a lofty goal, but with your guys' support, I definitely think that we will be able to get there. Now, the good thing is that I have had an opportunity to spend a decent amount of time behind both of these sights. I do feel like both of these sights are excellent options, but like I said in the beginning of the video, they do share a lot in common. So I figured, why not put them head to head, just so you guys have a very clear understanding of what you can expect if you guys are debating between which one of these you want to pick up here in 2025. So to kick this video off, we're going to start with the similarities. Now, the first similarity that both of these have is their slide rail, or their angled elevation slide rail. Obviously, the design is slightly different, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of both a little bit later in the video. But the adjustment on how you're going to zero out your scope housing is basically identical on both of these sights. Now, on the front of the sights, you do have two lock screws, or two set screws, that are going to loosen that scope housing and allow you to manually adjust that scope housing up and down to figure out where your 20 is. Both of these sights do offer a dead stop if they are set up properly. The one thing that you want to do is just make sure that your slide rail is at the top range, or as high as it can possibly go, before you start setting in or sighting in your 20-yard mark. Now, both of these sights on the table are a vertical pin configuration, but keep in mind both companies do offer in a horizontal pin. When you are looking at the vertical pin configuration, both sights do offer a toolless windage adjustment, which I'm a huge fan of. If you go over to their horizontal pin configuration, the HHA does lose that toolless, but the dialed Pruf series bow sight does maintain that on that design. Another really cool feature that both of these sights share, they now both offer a first, second, and third axis that is independent from one another, which is definitely going to come in handy if you are shooting uphill or downhill. Both of these sights do give you the ability to swap out or interchange between the various scope housings that they offer. So if you pick these up in a vertical pin, but you want to shoot a horizontal pin later, you will have the ability to do that. They also both offer you the option to run a aftermarket scope housing. So if you want to run something from UV, you'll be able to switch those out and put that on. Now, another great thing about these sights is they both offer multiple mounting configurations, so you can go from a pick mount to a bridge lock, also to a direct mount. And the good thing, or the best thing about that, is that if you pick these up and you want to change to a different bow manufacturer later down the road, they both give you the option to swap out that mounting bracket without having to buy a brand new sight. So it's definitely going to save you some costs from a consumer standpoint. Both of these sights do also have a very easy sight-in process. It's not going to take you a lot of time to get both of these sights dialed in. They both also offer the ability to easily swap out your arrow configuration. With the HHA Nytrx, they have replaceable roller wheels, and then with the dialed Pruf series bow sight, they have these switch tape rings that pop on and off very easily. You can buy multiple switch tape rings, you can buy multiple roller wheels. Like I said, it just makes setting up or switching between different arrow configurations very easy. Now, both of these sights do come in a Cerakote, but keep in mind the dialed comes standard Cerakote. The HHA Nytrx, if you want a Cerakote sight, you do have to go with their Pro series, and it is going to be a custom order. The good thing though is if you go with the Cerakote option, it does not increase the overall lead time if you were to order this directly through the manufacturer or through your local bow shop. Now, both of these sights are made here in the USA. Both of them come with a lifetime warranty, so you can rest assured if anything happens to either one of these sights throughout the life of the ownership, both companies are going to do an excellent job at taking care of you. So you're going to be in good hands in that regards. Now, next, let's kind of transition over and start talking about the differences that these two sights have. And the first thing that we're going to start with, once again, is that slide rail. Now, obviously, dialed is very well known for what they call their AES system, which stands for angled elevation slide rail. The most common question that I get asked is, can you really shoot further with a dialed sight? And the answer is yes. And the way that they achieve that is because of this slide rail. As you start to roll this sight down, it actually actually moves your scope housing closer to the bow. Again, if I look at the HHA slide rail, you can see that it just stays vertical with your bow riser. Your scope housing does not move closer. It basically stays in that same plane as you start to lower or raise this scope housing. But one thing that they did do differently in 2025 is they did lengthen this slide rail, giving you a little bit more adjustment range. Now next, let's talk about scope housings. And both of these scope housings, as far as size go, are almost identical. But the difference between both of these is your sight picture when you're at full draw. Because Dialed has moved that bubble to the top of this scope housing, you are getting a much cleaner sight picture. It is probably the largest sight picture that you're going to get through any of the sights that I've personally tested out over the last couple of years. Whereas if I take a look at the HHA Nytrx, you can see that they obviously have the bubble on the bottom of the scope housing. They did use a little bit of an oversized bubble in my opinion, but again, it doesn't create any obstructions. I just noticed that I get a little less sight picture, or a smaller sight picture, when I'm at full draw and shooting with the HHA Nytrx. The next thing that I want to kind of talk about is pin brightness. I feel like the HHA, and this was discovered after I did my testing, the HHA definitely has a leg up when compared to the Dialed Pruf when it comes to the brightness of their pins. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they have fibers basically wrapped all the way around this scope housing, really allowing these fibers to gather as much light as possible. Whereas if you look at the Dialed Pruf, their extra fibers are just basically located on the top of the sight. Now, one thing that I will say is that I've ran this sight in a hunting situation, I've ran this sight indoors, and at no point have I felt the need to run a light kit. But obviously, if you are hunting inside a blind, you may want to consider putting a light kit on your Dialed Pruf to get that extra brightness. Now, as far as changing the brightness of these pins on both of these scopes, they both offer a manual adjustment to either dim or brighten them. The Dialed Pruf just has a slide cover, which was the exact same setup as their Arxos. You can just slide it completely closed to shut off those fibers, or leave it wide open to expose them. You could also completely remove this slide cover if you want. And then, like I said, they do offer a light kit that would replace this slide cover. It is offered in various color options. And then also their newer light kits are also coming in different color options. So really giving you the ability to customize the look of this sight. Whereas the HHA Nytrx, they use what they call a mechanical rheostat, which basically is going to slide out to expose those fibers, or slide in or slide over the scope housing to close off those fibers. Now, the one thing that I don't like about this setup is as you slide that mechanical rheostat out, it does protrude out past the scope housing a little bit. It's not that big of an issue when you're at full draw. It's more of like a personal opinion. I would just much rather this be flush with the actual scope housing itself. And I would also really like the ability to customize that scope ring, or that sight picture ring. It'd be really cool if you could pick various color options to customize it to your liking. Personally, I like white. I know that they go with green because for some people it is a little bit easier to see in low light situations. Now next, let's go ahead and talk about the windage adjustment. And I know we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in the video, but HHA does do something a little bit different, where they do give you a macro adjustment. So if you loosen this up, you can slide this bar left or right to make large adjustments, and then from there you can go ahead and micro adjust that in. Whereas the Dialed, this one is just a toolless micro adjust through and through. They don't have that macro adjustment. They also retain that toolless micro adjust if you decide to go to a horizontal pin configuration, whereas with the HHA Nytrx, you do lose that option if you go with the horizontal pin configuration. At that point, you do have to carry around Allen wrenches to make those left and right adjustments, or to unlock that so you can do that macro or that micro adjustment. I personally would really like to see the toolless remain on the horizontal pins, but I get why they did that, because they did need to leave you guys a little bit of room to be able to adjust those horizontal pins as you're sighting those in. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is just the overall setup on that windage adjustment. Like I said, dialed, they do carry over the toolless micro adjust on the horizontal or vertical, but also the way that they built this is that basically when you loosen this up, it allows you to make that adjustment, and then when you tighten it back down, it basically sandwiches that whole system or compresses that whole system together, making it a very robust system. They also offer a lock for your windage adjustment, so once you get that dialed in, there is a set screw on the bottom of the sight that you can tighten down, and it's going to ensure that this is not going to move on you. Whereas the HHA, you can see that your windage adjustment and that bar is a little bit more exposed. It hangs out a little bit in front of the sight. I'm not saying that it lacks durability. I just really like how dialed came to the market with this new setup. Definitely with some of the complaints that they had received from the Arxos about durability, I really think they stepped their game up, and like I said, really beefed up the overall durability of this sight and made it super robust. Now next, let's shift over and talk about the roller wheel on both of these sights, and I'm going to start with the dialed because obviously it is a very unique setup. I mean, you know immediately when someone has a dialed Pruf series bow sight on the front of their bow because of this design. It is offered in multiple different color options, allowing you to further customize this sight. And one of the sweet things that they did in 2025 with the Pruf series is they went to a dual switch tape void dial, giving you the ability to run double sight tapes. So you can either run a calibration on one side and your sight tape on the other. They also give you the ability to swap that and run your sight tape on either side of the sight, further allowing you to customize it. Whereas if I look over at the HHA Nytrx, they do not give you the ability to dictate which side you want the sight tape on. You're limited to the outside of the sight. Now again, they do also offer the ability to get custom roller wheels. You do not need a Cerakote option in order to purchase those, but you do need the Pro version. So if you're picking up a Nytrx, I just would recommend that you get the Pro because of the ability to interchange those roller wheels. Now next, we're going to shift over and talk about pin indicators, and the pin indicators on the HHA Nytrx, I think they did a fantastic job on these. These are similar to what they've ran previously before in the past. They're very small, they come to a point, and it's very easy to select individual yardages, especially when you're running faster sight tapes. Now, when I compare that over to the dialed Pruf series bow sight, their indicators are a massive improvement over the Arxos series, but I still think that they need a little bit of work. They are a little fat for my liking, and when you're running their sight tapes for a fast arrow configuration, you do not have a lot of spacing in between lines, and it makes it very difficult, at least for me, to be able to pick individual yardages, especially when you're shooting like 20 out to 70, because those sight tape lines are so tight together. I would like to see those come to a point a little bit more, and then also I think it would help a lot is if those sight tape lines just went clean across the sight tape like they do on the HHA. There is a slight gap on the edge of your sight tape and your pin indicator, which makes it a little more difficult to dial in those specific yardages, especially like I said, when you're shooting 20 to 60 on a very fast sight tape. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is weight on both of these sights. Now, the dialed Pruf is the lightest sight on the table. I think it's coming in at roughly about 9 ounces, if I recall correctly, whereas the HHA Nytrx, I believe it's coming in at roughly about 14 ounces. So it is a little bit heavier of a sight, but other than that, like I said, I feel like these are both fantastic options. You literally cannot go wrong with either one of these that you pick. I always tell people, if you're hesitant to check out a dialed Pruf series bow sight, just buy one. You will not be dissatisfied with it. And the same goes for the HHA. If you're wondering on which sight to buy, and you're leaning more towards the HHA over the dialed Pruf, just buy buy it. You're not going to be unhappy with this. I feel like HHA has done a fantastic job on their sites, and really having the independent first, second, and third access for them this year was an absolute game changer and really helped kind of elevate them as far as their competitiveness on what they bring to the table with their site setups. But that's going to be it for this video. If you guys have any other questions, drop me a comment below, reach out to me directly on Instagram. I'm always happy to help. And like I said in the beginning of the video, please subscribe, like this video. Your guys' support greatly helps us out and keeps us doing what we're doing. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you guys on the next one.